Welcome to Creepy Vibes. Tonight, we're heading deep into the heart of Texas, a place where the land stretches wide and the shadows stretch even wider. It's a land full of whispers, ghost lights, and secrets buried so deep they were never meant to be found. We're about to uncover 5 of the most disturbing true horror stories from the Lone Star State, stories that blur the line between what's real and what should have stayed in the dark. But hey, before we dive in, let me ask you something. Are you one of those people who watch creepy stories but forget to hit that subscribe button? Because here's the thing, most people do, and by doing that, they miss out on the scariest, spine-chilling tales we share every week. Don't make that mistake. Hit that subscribe button now, because the stories you're about to hear, they're just the beginning. Now tell me, where are you watching from? What time is it right now where you are? Drop it in the comments, because around here, the night's just getting started. And trust me, something in the dark is already watching. So turn down the lights, make sure you're alone, and let's dive into the darkness. Jefferson, Texas looks like a postcard from another time. Red brick sidewalks, gas lamps that flicker to life at dusk, old paddle boats that sit like sleeping giants along the banks of the Big Cypress Bayou. The place smells like wet leaves, old river water, and sometimes, if you stand real still and let the quiet settle in, it smells like dirt that hasn't been turned in centuries. Tourists love the ghost walks, the antique shops, and the local legends that come with every porch swing and creaking floorboard. But the locals, they know the difference between stories for fun and stories that keep you up at night. They don't talk about the Jefferson Hill Cemetery after dark, not in public, not even in whispers. Especially not about the tomb in the back, where the trees grow twisted and the grass dies in circles around the stone. The tomb has no name, no date, just an old iron door half swallowed by the ground and a heavy stone lid stained with something darker than rain. They say the wailing comes in the early morning hours, between 3 and 4 a.m., when the fog rolls off the bayou like breath from a cold grave. That's when it starts. A single cry, low and painful, like someone mourning their own death. Then more cries join in, overlapping, building into a rising wall of agony that shakes the tombstones and makes even the animals stay silent. The sheriff once sent 2 deputies to investigate. One quit the next day and moved to Arizona. The other walks with a cane now and won't speak a word about what he saw. Eleanor Ward didn't believe in ghosts. She believed in facts, archives, and history that could be traced through records and names on paper. She was 42, had 2 PhDs, and had written 3 books on haunted folklore, each one proving that the scariest thing about ghost stories was how much people wanted them to be true. When she heard about Jefferson, she was already looking for her next book, something that would put her name in every library from here to New York. So, she packed her camera gear, her digital recorders, and her skepticism, and rented a room in one of the old hotels downtown. Everyone was friendly, until she asked about the tomb. Old men on porches would suck their teeth and shake their heads. The librarian got quiet and said there were no records of a tomb like that in the Jefferson archives, not one, and she'd been working there for 23 years. "It's better you don't go looking for it," she whispered. "Some things don't want to be found." But Eleanor did what academics do. She looked, she asked, she ignored the warning signs. And when she found the tomb, tucked away in a grove of gnarled trees beyond the marked graves, she felt a chill creep down her spine for the first time in years. She set up her gear just after midnight. The fog was already thick. Her breath came out in little puffs as she adjusted the settings on her voice recorder. "Saturday, November 12th, 12:14 a.m., she whispered. "I'm camped near the unnamed tomb in Jefferson Hill Cemetery. No sound yet. All equipment is active. The first hour was calm. Crickets chirped, a few distant howls of coyotes. She even started to feel bored. At 1:33 a.m., her recorder picked up a low sound, barely audible, like wind moving through a pipe. Then it stopped. At 2:17 a.m., she heard it again, but louder this time, and wrong. Like something was imitating a human cry, but didn't quite know how to make it sound right. It was warped, hollow. Then the air grew heavy, too heavy, like the oxygen had thickened into syrup. Her lungs felt tight. The fog turned darker, almost gray-black, and started to move against the wind. And then came the voices. Dozens, no, hundreds, whispering in some language that didn't sound human. Not Latin, not anything she'd ever heard. It felt wet, slippery, the kind of words that made your stomach twist and your ears ring. Eleanor dropped to her knees. Her nose bled, her vision blurred. The ground beneath her pulsed like it had a heartbeat, slow and steady and strong. And the tomb. The tomb moved. Not a lot, just a fraction of an inch, but it rose, and then fell like it was breathing. And through the madness and the whispers, one voice broke through, clear, deep, and ancient. It said her name. "Eleanor!" she screamed. But the voice didn't stop. It kept repeating her name, slowly, like it was testing how the syllables fit inside its mouth. She ran. She ran through the cemetery, blind and bleeding, stumbling over cracked stones and low fences, until the fog swallowed her whole. They found her 4 days later in the woods, curled up under a collapsed hunting blind, muttering nonsense. She was taken to a psychiatric hospital in Texarkana, where she remains to this day. She no longer speaks to her doctors, but she writes, over and over on the walls, on her arms, on the backs of napkins. She draws the same tomb, the same symbols etched in the stone around it, and she writes 3 phrases again and again. The tomb cannot be opened. They are trapped beneath. It knows my name. The audio from her recorder survived. Investigators listened to it once, only once. They say the cries aren't human. They say something speaks from beneath the ground. They say the last words on the tape, just before it cuts to static, are Eleanor's voice, whispering, "I saw what's under the dirt, and it saw me back." No one talks about the tomb anymore, not even the ghost tour guides. Some say the town paid to have it sealed with reinforced concrete, buried under a new layer of earth. Others say they just let the forest take it. But if you go walking on Jefferson Hill around 3 a.m. on a foggy night, you might still hear it, low and distant, a soft wailing carried on the wind. And if you're unlucky, it might call your name, because the dead in Jefferson don't rest, and some tombs aren't meant to stay closed. There are places in Texas where the land just feels old, places where the air is too still, the sky too wide, and the rocks seem to remember things you'd rather not know. The Rio Grande Canyon is one of those places. It stretches like a wound across the land, cutting between Texas and Mexico, a deep scar carved by time, water, and God only knows what else. The cliffs rise up sharp and jagged, towering over the slow-moving river below like silent guards. People say it's beautiful, and it is. But it's the kind of beauty that comes with a warning. The kind that makes you feel small, watched. Locals talk about the canyon in hushed voices, especially the deeper parts, where the trails fade into nothing and the rocks grow black as coal. They call that part the hollow. They say if you stare into it long enough, it stares back. But nobody says what that means. Not out loud. Thomas Wheeler was the kind of man who never flinched. 49 years old, skin tough as boot leather, and eyes like sun-bleached bone. He'd worked the canyon for over 2 decades, leading backpackers, researchers, and thrill seekers into places most folks wouldn't even try to hike. He knew every bend of the river, every curve in the cliffs, and he knew the stories. He just didn't talk about them until the last trip. It was supposed to be a 4-day trek with 2 geology students and a wildlife photographer. Just a routine job. Nothing fancy, nothing risky. But Thomas took them deeper than usual, into an area he'd always avoided. Said he had something he wanted to show them. The first night in the canyon was uneventful. They camped beneath a shelf of rock, listening to the river and the hum of insects. The students were chatty, asking Thomas about fossils and caves. The photographer kept snapping pictures, especially after the sun dipped behind the cliffs and the shadows thickened like oil. That's when they saw them. Eyes, not animal eyes, not glowing like a reflection, but lit from within, like lanterns burning deep in the stone. Huge, perfectly round, and absolutely still, just sitting there in the black folds of the canyon walls. Reflections off some mineral, one of the students said, half laughing. Mica or quartz. Thomas didn't laugh. He didn't even blink. They're not reflections, he said quietly, staring at the cliff. They've been there a long time, watching. The group laughed it off, but no one slept well that night. The next morning, Thomas changed. He was quiet, nervous, kept looking over his shoulder like he was expecting something to follow. He led them down a narrow trail that wasn't on any map, cutting through tight crevices and brush that hadn't been touched in decades. "Are you sure this is safe?" the photographer asked, huffing. Thomas didn't answer right away. Then, finally, he said, "I've seen them move." That shut everybody up. He told them about his first sighting, 12 years ago. Said he was guiding a group of birdwatchers when he wandered too far from camp. Thought he saw something glowing in the canyon wall. When he got closer, it blinked. It blinked. He never told anyone because, as he put it, some truths are too big to carry alone. The deeper they went, the more the canyon seemed to change. The air grew thick, heavy. The silence turned weird, like it wasn't empty, just waiting. Every so often, one of them would spot the eyes again, far above or tucked into the rocks. They never came closer, but they were always there. On the third night, Thomas sat by the fire with his boots off, staring into the dark. "They're not the eyes of men," he said out of nowhere. His voice was low, almost trembling. "They're older than this canyon, older than the river. They're under us, sleeping, dreaming, and sometimes they wake up hungry." That was the last thing he said. In the morning, his gear was still there, his boots, his backpack, his rifle. But Thomas Wheeler was gone. No signs of struggle, no footprints, nothing but a trail of shallow impressions in the dirt, like something had slithered, not walked, away from camp. The photographer wanted to leave. One of the students tried to call for help, but their satellite phone was dead. The other just sat staring at the canyon wall, muttering about how the eyes were closer now, closer than before. They tried to hike out, but the canyon didn't let them. Trails they'd used the day before were gone, swallowed up by rock slides or just missing. Trees they remembered passing weren't there anymore. It was like the whole place had shifted while they slept, and the eyes followed, always in the corners of their vision, always watching. By the time rescuers found them, 2 days late and 20 miles off course, only the photographer and one of the students were still alive. They were half mad with dehydration and terror, both repeating the same sentence over and over. "It sees. It knows." No one goes into the hollow anymore. Even the park rangers avoid it. They say the rocks whisper at night, that if you shine a light into the cliff walls and wait long enough, something will blink back. And sometimes, when the wind dies down and the river is still, you can feel it. Something deep beneath the ground, breathing. So if you ever find yourself near the Rio Grande Canyon and you see something glowing in the rock, don't look back, and don't let it know your name. There's something off about small towns at night. They can be cozy by day, little diners, sleepy roads, front porches with rocking chairs. But when the sun goes down and the streets empty, those same towns can feel haunted. Like something is hiding just outside the glow of the streetlights, watching, waiting. San Angelo, Texas is one of those places. To most people, it's just a quiet town nestled along the Concho River. Peaceful, charming, old. But there are whispers, old ones. Stories passed between bartenders and gas station attendants. Rumors shared in the back of barbershops or whispered in church pews. Stories about them, the harbingers. Carl Reynolds wasn't a superstitious man. He was a journalist, the kind who chased stories people were too afraid to tell. Tall, lean, always wore this beat-up brown leather jacket and carried a notebook wherever he went. He'd heard about the legends of San Angelo from a trucker at a roadside diner just outside Abilene. The guy had leaned in close over a plate of eggs and muttered, "They walk the streets at night, man. Not ghosts, not people either. They come when death is near." That was enough to get Carl curious. So, on a chilly October evening, Carl checked into a small motel just outside downtown San Angelo. Room 6, a plain, quiet room with creaky floors and a rattling heater. He unpacked his things, flipped open his notebook, and wrote 3 words at the top of a blank page: The Harbinger's Walk. He spent his first day interviewing locals. Most of them laughed off the legend. "Old wives' tale," said the grocery store clerk. "Just shadows and wind," said a waitress at a rundown diner. But a woman at the town library, an old woman with cloudy eyes and hands like twisted roots, had whispered something different. "They walk when the town forgets it's dead," she said, "and the town forgets so easily." That night, Carl walked the streets with a small camera and his notebook. The town was nearly silent. No cars, no people. Just wind brushing through empty branches and the occasional flicker of a street lamp on the verge of going out. That's when he saw them. They came from the east end of town, near the old cemetery. There were 3 at first, tall, thin, wrapped in what looked like black robes. Their faces were not visible. They wore shadow like a second skin, and where their eyes should have been was nothing but black emptiness. They didn't speak. They didn't make a sound. But as they walked, the streetlights behind them flickered and died, one by one, like candles snuffed out by cold breath. Carl didn't run. He just stood there, frozen, like the air had turned to ice inside his lungs. As they passed him, one of them tilted its head. Not all the way, just a small, unnatural movement, like a question without words. Then came the whisper. Not from its mouth, because he never saw a mouth, but from the air around him. "The dead walk with us now." Carl stumbled backward, breath visible in the air despite the mild temperature. He dropped his notebook and scrambled to grab it, heart slamming in his chest. When he looked up, they were gone. The street was empty, but the cold stayed. Carl made it back to the motel around midnight. He locked the door, bolted it, shoved a chair beneath the handle. He turned on every light, sat on the edge of the bed, and started writing. He wrote for hours. The notebook filled with page after page of shaky, frantic handwriting. About the harbingers, about the whisper, about how he could still feel them, even behind the locked door. Like something had followed him. He wrote, "Their faces are not faces. They're veils, coverings. But I saw beneath one of them, just for a second. I saw what was under the veil, and I shouldn't have. Then came the last line, scrawled large across the page. I saw the veil fall. The motel manager found his room the next morning. The lights were still on. The chair was still jammed under the door. But Carl was gone. No blood, no sign of a struggle. His camera was still there, his wallet, his bag. The only thing left on the bed was his journal. Every page filled, except the last. That one was blank. But if you tilt it in the right light, if you really look, some say there are faint marks, like impressions from a hand dragging across the paper, or claw marks. Now, San Angelo is still quiet. People still go about their business. Kids still ride bikes, and old men still fish along the riverbanks. But on certain nights when the wind shifts just right and the air goes suddenly cold, some say you can still see them, moving through the streets, faces hidden, eyes empty. And if you listen closely, real close, you'll hear them whispering. The dead walk with us now. So if you ever find yourself in San Angelo after dark, and the streets are too quiet, don't follow the shadows. Don't stop to stare. And whatever you do, don't look beneath the veil. Odessa, Texas. A place where the wind never sleeps, the land stretches out forever, and the oil rigs pump like giant steel skeletons refusing to die. Most folks there don't believe in much besides hard work, football, and God. And maybe beer on a Friday night if the paycheck came in clean. But every so often, maybe once a decade, maybe longer, something happens in Odessa that no one can explain. The sky breaks, not with thunder, not with lightning. It cracks, like glass, like the world is just a window, and something on the other side is trying to look in. The first time it happened, back in '71, the sheriff swore he saw a dark line open up across the clouds. No thunder, no storm, just a jagged rip in the heavens, like someone had taken a knife to the blue sky. He said something looked out. He never talked about what that something was. Just turned in his badge and drank himself into silence. But word got around. As it always does in small towns, locals started calling it the crack in the sky. No one really believed it, until it happened again, and again, and again. Dr. Marcus Gray didn't believe in ghosts or aliens or rips in the sky. He was a man of science, taught atmospheric physics at UT Austin before he moved to Odessa for a quiet life and a teaching job at the community college. But Marcus had a bad habit. He asked questions. He started hearing rumors from old oil field workers, guys who said the rigs sometimes stopped moving when the sky cracked, like time itself froze. Others talked about shadows in the sky that didn't belong to planes or birds or clouds. Shapes that moved too slowly, shapes that watched. So Marcus did what scientists do. He brought equipment, cameras, monitors, sensors, and one late summer evening, he went out to the flatlands northeast of Odessa. Just him and his gear. The sun dipped low, the wind died, the air got heavy. Then it happened. It started with a sound. Not thunder, not wind. It was like glass under pressure. A slow, aching creak. Then a sudden pop, like something broke in the sky. And there it was. A long black crack above him, stretching from horizon to horizon. Jagged, flickering, glowing at the edges like hot metal. Behind it, something else. A sky that wasn't our sky. Purple and pulsing, full of motion and eyes. Not literal ones, maybe, but it felt like eyes. Watching, measuring, choosing. Marcus stared up, mouth open, his camera still recording, the sensors going wild with static. The air got thick, so thick he couldn't breathe, like it was pressing down on him. Then his feet left the ground. His body floated, slow but steady, toward the sky like he weighed nothing. No wind, no force, just this invisible pull, like gravity had flipped. He tried to scream but couldn't. The sound wouldn't come out. The crack seemed closer now, and he could see movement behind it. Slow, hulking things with shapes that didn't make sense. Like animals drawn wrong. Like someone imagined a creature they had never seen before and almost got it right. Then something looked at him. That's when he dropped. Not hard, just released. He collapsed in the dirt, shaking, mouth moving, but no sound coming out. I found him 2 hours later. His team, 2 young grad students who had been setting up equipment on a ridge nearby, heard the static go dead and ran toward the field. Marcus was lying on his back, eyes wide open, mouth dry and cracked, skin cold. He wasn't dead, but he wasn't okay. They got him to the hospital. He never once blinked on the ride over, never responded to voices, just stared out the window like he was still looking at that sky. He only said one thing, over and over. There is no end to it. One of the cameras caught it. Not the crack, not clearly at least. But the sky flickered, just once, like a glitch. And for exactly 4.3 seconds, the stars above Odessa rearranged themselves into a pattern that does not exist in any star chart known to man. And in the top right corner of the frame was an eye. Wide, dark, and moving. They deleted the footage. The university said it was a lens flare. Now, people don't talk about the sky in Odessa. They look down when they walk. They don't go out into the fields at night. And when the wind stops and the air turns heavy, they shut their windows and pray. Because the cracks still come. Not often, but they do. And when they do, something on the other side looks back. So if you ever find yourself in Odessa on a still, quiet evening, and the sky suddenly goes too silent, don't look up, don't even breathe, just get inside, because next time, it might not let go. There's a stretch of land deep in the Texas Hill Country where GPS gets fuzzy, phone signals die, and even seasoned ranchers won't let their cattle roam. The grass there grows crooked, trees twist toward the ground, birds fly around it, but never over it. Locals call it the sink, not because anything's ever fallen into it, but because time feels like it sinks there, slows, doctoral degrees, twists. They say there's something buried beneath it, something old, something not built by any settler or oil man, something with gears, big ones, still turning. The team that found it came from UT Austin, funded by a private foundation with too much money and not enough patience. 5 archaeologists, 1 historian, and a drone operator named Ben, who thought this would be the easiest paycheck of his life. They found it on the 2nd day, half buried beneath layers of limestone and black clay. Metal, not rusted, not modern, cold, smooth, ancient. A wheel the size of a truck tire with teeth like a clock. Ben's drone captured footage of more below the surface, interlocking shapes, strange arcs, massive plates. A machine, built long before any white man ever set foot in Texas, long before the Tonkawa or the Comanche, maybe before time as we know it even existed. The team called it Structure 17. They tried to study it, tried to explain it. The metal didn't match any known alloy. The markings on the surface weren't letters or numbers, just symbols. Curved, spiral, looping, patterns that made your eyes water if you looked at them too long. And worst of all, it moved. Not fast, not loud, but it moved. Gears turned slowly in the dark. Even after 1,000 years underground, it still turned. That's when things got weird. Ben was the first to notice. He'd check his watch. 20 minutes would pass, but his battery wouldn't drain. Sometimes it gained time instead of losing it. He swore he saw a deer in the woods, running backward. Dr. Lee, the historian, started dreaming in languages she didn't know. She'd wake up writing them down. Glyphs, spirals, blueprints. One afternoon, they found Dr. Harriet Knox standing completely still next to the machine, not moving, not blinking, her lips twitching like she was whispering to something. When they shook her, she collapsed. She kept repeating the same sentence. "We're the ones who built it. We just don't know it yet." Still, they kept digging. They opened a hatch. A tunnel spiraled downward, carved perfectly into the rock. No tool marks, no signs of wear. Just smooth, cold metal and a low hum that you felt more than heard. Inside were more gears, more spinning teeth, pistons that pulsed like veins, lights that flickered with no wires or bulbs. They found a room, a chamber, and on its walls were carvings of the machine in every age, covered in jungle, covered in ice, covered in stars. One image showed people standing around it with their eyes missing. Reality started breaking. Some of the team claimed to see themselves walking outside the dig site, except they hadn't left the tunnel. Others heard music from the 1800s playing from nowhere. On the final day, the machine made a sound, a click, not loud, just final, like the moment a key turns in a lock. Ben dropped his camera. Dr. Lee screamed and tried to claw her eyes out, and something opened, a space in the center of the machine where light bent the wrong way, like looking through water or a dream. Something stepped through, something tall, made of bone and gears and shadow. Dr. Knox walked toward it like a sleepwalker. The others followed. Ben ran. Weeks later, Ben was found wandering down Highway 290, barefoot and bleeding from his ears. He didn't say much, didn't talk to the police, only clutched a torn-up journal, pages stained with mud and blood. The last entry read, "It never stopped turning. It never will. We didn't discover it. It discovered us. Now." The site is sealed. They say it was a sinkhole. Government moved fast, real fast. Fences, security, trucks with no logos. But at night, when the wind's right, folks living near Johnson City say they hear something deep underground. A low hum, a grinding sound, like gears, turning, always turning.